Japan by River Cruise is made possible thanks to those who donate to the show at japanbyrivercruise.com and due to the generosity of our corporate sponsors. This week, a job listing from the JBRC Classifieds.
Japan International Casting Agency is seeking energetic, dedicated professional actors or whoever for a brand new variety of Gaikokujin casting. You may know us as Japan's largest purveyor of fake priests to the Japanese bridal industry, but due to the substantial reduction in the number of weddings being held during the pandemic, we've branched out into some new and exciting areas. Now casting for fake doctor, scientist. Foreign actors appear as doctors or scientists in commercials all the time to lend an air of international authority to products that are expensive because of all the science involved. But now, we've found that we can market those same services to a small but active number of Japanese anti-maskers. Fake tourist. For the Japanese right-wingers who want to tweet about how they saw you breaking your quarantine and claim that foreigners are behind the spread of COVID. Fake Olympic athlete. Work for the Japanese government and erode public opposition to letting athletes in by convincing people that they're already here. Please be aware that after being booked for these roles, you may experience certain drawbacks, like not being allowed into your local supermarket. So, get in touch today. Sure, if you're a foreigner in the Japanese entertainment industry, some of these gigs might seem a little bit of a sellout move, but hey, that's never stopped you before.
Hello, Brian, and welcome back to Japan by River Cruise. I'm Bobby Judo.
And I'm Ollie Horn.
And our guest this week is Alisha Ivelich. She's the host of English Class 101, an English language education channel that has more than 5 million subscribers. She's also the founder of Non-Native Creative, an interview series which features creatives working across borders and languages. And in her latest venture, the travel docuseries Elements of Japan, she became a household name for Japanese river cruise fans everywhere when she rebranded Kotatsu on a boat as Botatsu. Alisha, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
On this week's show, how has a year and a half of closed borders affected travel content produced in Japan? Has the pandemic created an opportunity for locally curated looks at Japan that might be more authentic? If so, why doesn't Alisha's show feature more rental families and murder hornets? We'll ask all of that and more, plus Ollie's got your weekly river cruise recommendation. Ollie?
Yes, Bobby, this week I'll be recommending the privacy-focused river cruise that was mentioned in Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference keynote this week. Bobby, we know more than most that when attending river cruises on the regular, it can cause havoc with your targeted ads on social media.
Oh, yeah, for sure. After just my first few river cruises, every single website I visited wanted to feed me ads for discount cruise tickets and also bulk purchases of hemorrhoid cream.
Right. Yes. Well, the news just in is that iPhone users who upgrade to iOS 15 will now not be tracked on any river cruise unless they either expressly opt in or can't afford the $10 a month iCloud Plus subscription.
Also, Tokyo Disney is open for business, and guess what? They've announced plans to revamp the It's a Small World cruise in honor of the Tokyo Olympics. Renovation work will begin as soon as they find out which countries they'll need to remove. That story coming up soon, but first, Soap Talk.
Brian, thanks for coming back. Just let us know if at any point you've got something that you'd like to add.
Cool.
Okay, Alisha, as we mentioned, you host a YouTube channel with over 5 million subscribers. So our question is, when are you going to box Floyd Mayweather?
I haven't been working on my boxing skills so much. I've been planning to get to it. We'll see.
That's okay. Neither did Jake
I have
Paul.
no plans. Yeah, I have no plans at this time, but I will consider it for the future.
So there's a bunch of things that we're hoping to talk to you about today. One nice little bit of serendipity. We noticed that you tweeted in support of Naomi Osaka's press conference decision last week. We also made a small reference to it in last week's show, but I think we were all on the same page that it was a fair and important decision on her part to take care of herself. We're wondering what you thought about her decision and kind of like what it took to make that decision.
Yeah, I thought that her choice to step down from the tournament was good for her, but it also, I thought, was a particularly important moment because she was, in the statement that she released on Twitter, she showed all of the steps that she had taken in an effort to reach a compromise, was unable to reach a compromise, and made a decision ultimately by establishing boundaries for herself and choosing something above her work. And I thought that was a really good example of someone making all of the necessary, or rather taking all of the necessary steps to try to reach a compromise before taking ultimately that step of removing herself. So I thought that it was really good to see somebody doing that on an international stage and not just kind of bowing to pressure or continuing to put herself in a situation where she felt uncomfortable. So I thought it was good.
Yeah. And it's nice that she did something decisive and call out the fact that so many of the sponsors which adorn her t-shirts and whatnot will, whenever a mental health issue comes up, will tweet out the platitudes and say that it's important to do what we can. But when she says, actually, I'm really fed up with this and I don't want to do it and I'm going to feel sad if I do it, then there's still sufficient pressure to go, no, it's your job.
Yeah.
It's your job. The job of a tennis player is you've got to talk at 11 p.m. and answer questions from people that want you to have a breakdown. Well, and so I don't think it's necessarily the start of a sea change yet. But I mean, she already had so much of our respect, and now she has considerably more.
I think one of the things that was really interesting was how it highlighted kind of what is the value of these press conferences and the answers that come out of these press conferences now, and how the quality of the questions and the quality of the journalism that comes out of them has kind of declined to clickbaity, kind of lowest common denominator, and even like, you know, more focused on the personal than the actual content of the sport or the matches. And in the past, I saw somebody kind of really lay it out in an interesting way, where they said in the past, this was the outlet. This was the way for athletes to get information out to the public. And now they have a direct line. Now everybody has social media where they have a direct line of contact to relay that information. And while I really appreciated that point, it also made me think of the same thing that people said about Trump, when it was, you know, why does Trump spurn press conferences? Why does he get so antagonistic with the media? It was because he didn't need the relationship with them. It was because he could contact his followers directly. So it's really interesting to me the way kind of social media has changed the media landscape in every field.
Yeah, and also I was not expecting this episode to feature a conflation of Donald Trump and Naomi Osaka, but I'm glad we've done it.
Hey! Don't. That was not my intention.
But I think you're absolutely right. And just like Trump was more than a politician, he was a personality. Obviously, one of the reasons why this is a matter of tension is that we expect sports players to be more than sports players. They are sports personalities, and obviously part of the reason why there's the amount of money that there is not just because they play great games, but because they provide entertaining stories.
Yeah.
And people can make money from that.
I noticed there was a story that just got released earlier today that she pulled out of the Berlin tournament as well, ahead of Wimbledon. And I'm just kind of hoping that you know, the break that she's taking is good for her mental health, and that, you know, the decision to take care of herself pays off, and that it doesn't turn into something that's ultimately more damaging than good. Hope she's okay.
Alisha, I had some good news, which is that I've now booked in for my vaccination.
Congratulations.
Thank you. How do you feel as an American who pays their tax dollars to America but is in Japan and cannot get her jab?
I'm just hanging out. What else can I do? You know?
Have you seen that the pressure's mounting from American citizens to the country, saying we think that spare vaccines should be sent to Americans around the world?
Oh, yes. I mean, well, I see kind of the comments on social media, especially among Americans who are living in Japan, for sure. But I've seen people that are going to the U.S. to get vaccinated and then coming back. Mm-hmm. I guess if you have the ability to make that work for you, it seems like a pretty good option. But I guess for me, I'm just like, I really would like to have it sooner rather than later, obviously. But until then, my options are to be real mad or to hang out. So I've chosen to hang out. So, yeah, personal choice. I'm chilling, just waiting. So this is my approach generally.
Yeah, well, I think we'd all be happier if we were like that.
Yeah.
Bobby, you're not planning a vaccination?
I can't. I'm not in a position where I could afford the time off of work for the quarantine I would have to go through on my way back in, or the time I'd lose from being away. But luckily I got my antibodies the old-fashioned way.
Did you really?
I did. I totally. We've discussed it on other episodes, so I won't go through it again. But yeah, no. My whole family, we got them.
You're here, and you're not saying any of this with a sad tone of voice. So I will say, congratulations.
We're on the other side. Yeah.
Yep.
And when that happened, our listeners were very, very nice to us. And so we should take this opportunity to thank those that have been nice to us this week. Oleg has bought us another 5 coffees. Thank you very much. And also Claire has bought us, yes, another coffee and messaged us to say that she'd like to hear an episode about lesbian culture in Japan.
Yeah.
And has given us some fantastic suggestions for people to reach out to. We always appreciate people sending in suggestions for guests. We can't always guarantee that they're going to be a fit.
When Ollie says we can't guarantee they'll be a fit, he says we can't guarantee they'll say yes to us.
Yeah, exactly. We can't guarantee that they won't listen to the first 10 minutes of any show and politely decline. But nevertheless, if you can think of someone that you'd like to hear on the show, we are always more than happy to hear from them.
We will definitely reach out to them. And thank you, Claire, for all of the great suggestions.
Bobby, with that, shall we jump into the news? Bobby Judo, what's in the news this week?
Handful of stories out this week about when tourism to Japan will be possible again. The Japan Times has a story about the future of tourism in Japan. The country's official tourism page has been completely redone to focus on safe travel, local travel, and COVID prevention. Everybody's wondering about the future of travel in Japan. And the fact that the borders have been closed for over a year and a half now has really affected travel content being produced in Japan. Among that backdrop, Alisha and her partner Erwin have started a new series called Elements of Japan, which is an original Japan travel docuseries. Alisha, we're really looking forward to talking to you about your first episode, Iniwate, and the future of the series. First off, what's it like to produce travel content during a pandemic?
It's an interesting question for sure, because there are so many variables to consider that you wouldn't maybe have to consider as much in a normal time. But the choices that we've made so far with the series have been largely, I would say, unaffected by the pandemic in Japan, or at least we try to make choices and make our schedules work according to the rules that are established by the, local and national governments. So we're not trying to put anybody at risk, or find any we're trying to ensure that we film the content in an educational and responsible way. So that means, for example, that we do shoots outside, like one-on-one. We're wearing masks when we do the interviews with the people that we're talking to, and we clarify beforehand, what kinds of things we would like to talk to people about, how long the contact is going to be, and then also my teammate Erwin and I, we're both pretty, I think, happy to follow the rules, the social distance and the isolation related rules too. So we are making sure that we're taking the local people in mind, keeping them in our mind, and trying to make the best choices that we possibly can, while also trying to use this time that is available to showcase maybe aspects of Japan that we might not otherwise be able to include.
Well, we were very pleased to note that in your first episode, in the first 90 seconds, there is a glorious shot of a river cruise. So we understand that you are trying to trample on our market, and that's absolutely fine. It's lucrative and big enough for all of us. But one thing that struck me about your videos is they're very, very cinematic. They're very beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Gorgeous.
And the level of production quality is absolutely insane. And you're obviously thinking first and foremost about the kind of visual narrative and storytelling, in addition to the kind of the more documentary elements. And that must be a really, really hard balance to strike, because they're kind of two different genres, aren't they? The kind of classic documentary, which is full of facts, and just the sit back, relax, and enjoy the beautiful scenery. What kind of audience are you anticipating for this series?
There are actually a number of kind of things that we wanted to sort of push ourselves to do with this. One, as you mentioned, is obviously the camera work. That's Erwin. Erwin has amazing gear, and he has a wealth of experience as a photographer, and he's, moving his skill set into video as well too.
I mean, let's be clear, it's not just the gear, is it? He's clearly very talented.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know he likes to talk about getting this gear or that gear, being really greedy with like finding weird new cool cameras to experiment with. But I think that kind of interest and that enthusiasm really comes through in his work. And that's what helps get some of the shots that you see in the series. So there is that part of it. Sure. But in terms of your question about who our audience is and who we're trying to attract, there are a couple. One is the people who are already enthusiastic about Japan, obviously. But we would also really like to be creating content that presents Japan in a slightly different way than perhaps it has been presented on YouTube in the past. By which we mean that we're really making an active effort to create bilingual content. And one of the things that we really set out in our kind of outline for the project when we were brainstorming is we really, really wanted to make sure that the voices that are included in the series are literally local voices, so that it's not just me, a white girl, presenting everything to an audience and everything gets filtered through me, but rather you become familiar with me as a kind of anchor for this series, and then I go and talk to people, and they are the ones that are telling us about local information or local history, whatever that might be. So we really wanted to showcase, of course, beautiful scenery and history and craft and so many other topics. We really wanted to put the focus on local people's perspectives and not kind of trying to put everything through our own lens. We didn't want to do that because both Erwin and I kind of feel that there's already too much of that on YouTube. So with our prototype episode, we're trying to kind of find the line between like documentary style and the little bit of like the YouTube like kind of casualness, I suppose. So we're finding that right now.
I think that's a real clear kind of elucidation of how you stack up against other YouTube content. But the last year and a half, production companies from overseas that would be coming in making Japan travel content haven't been able to come in. Even places that do a lot of outward-facing Japan travel content like NHK World hasn't been able to travel around Japan and produce new content. The show that I do, Cycle Around Japan, hasn't done any new shoots in a long time. They just keep kind of re-editing and putting up like a highlight. It's at the point where it's not Cycle Around Japan. It's more like recycle content around Japan. But
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you very much. But the question that I wanted to ask was, I see what sets you apart from kind of mainstream YouTube Japan content. Where do you see you guys doing something different from documentary Japan content or overseas produced Japan content?
I would say, going back to the point about not having the host as the expert, I'm kind of in content that I've seen where someone comes from outside Japan and gets plopped into Japan and is like the travel host for a series. They are often a person that maybe doesn't have a great deal of expertise, or they're kind of there to be like the bewildered foreigner and kind of do all of the basic things. So we wanted to explore what you could do if you took a person or a team, in this case, a small team, that actually lives in Japan and has these experiences, has kind of the cultural background, the linguistic background, to be able to ask questions and understand the ways that things are done or the ways that people interact a little bit better, and present that to an audience in a different way. So we didn't want it to be like bumbling foreigner comes to Japan and eats a bunch of sushi. And we're tired of that. Yeah,
it's the exact opposite with Japan-produced content about foreign countries as well. Because when I was working for Sakai Fushigi Hakken as the mystery hunter, the only time that I could get a job is when they were going to be filming something in Japan. And the reason they would never use me for content where they were introducing foreign countries is because what they want is that Japanese person's reaction when they go to a foreign country and they go, "Whoa, what is this? Nanja Korea?" As opposed to, me going to somewhere in America and being like, this is what we do.
Right? So that's another, to go like to go even deeper, then that's another audience that we actually do hope to reach and already have reached, is Japanese viewers who would like to see their country and their culture in a different way or in a different interpretation. Because when you watch variety shows about Japan, and exactly as you've just described, Bobby, when you watch those variety shows, it's all about like this kind of weird reaction, or it's all got to be kind of silly. So we're kind of trying to explore. Yeah, exactly. We're kind of trying to explore, what if we took a really serious kind of cinematic approach to this whole experience? We make it very serious, but we also have fun with it. So what kind of response can we get from that? Because I think that if we continue to do exactly the same thing that we've always done in all media forms, then we don't really ever learn or grow. And that's kind of boring.
It is interesting that with your partner's skills and with your background, you can produce something that is on par with broadcast television. And when I think to the UK, the last three kind of big travel documentaries in Japan that were made were with Joanna Lumley, James May, Sue Perkins. I think there are another couple from that kind of genre, which is a very, very famous face that, as you said, knows nothing about Japan, but goes there. Look, they're perfectly respectful and they say very polite things. But for someone like me who who has lived in the country and does speak the language and knows it, I find it a really frustrating watch, because I think, well, if I were there as their fixer, she wouldn't have said that, or they wouldn't have gone there. And you compare that to someone like Chris Broad, who did his own travel show around Japan. And there's enough of that, of, people like Chris Broad because he's got a good on-screen persona and he's likable and interesting for the same reason they like Joanna Lumley or whoever else. But he offers this extra kind of sensitivity and insight. And that's obviously what you're going for, this idea that it's not just you that we're following, but it's your expertise that's guiding us through the country.
Yeah, but what do you do to compensate for the fact that bumbling personality, that clueless person, is the stand-in for the average viewer? And that's what the average viewer wants to see. I kind of feel like the market for somebody who wants kind of more detailed, more informed content is narrower than the person who watches and goes, yeah, I agree. What is going on? This is crazy.
Well, you're right, because often people will be watching these travel shows and will never go. This is the closest they'll ever get to going to Japan.
So both of you completely agree with both things. Yeah, exactly. To answer your point, Bobby, we kind of try to inject moments of lightness throughout the show. So it's not all heavy, serious talk, but then we make some jokes like about botatsu or whatever. We make those jokes so that people kind of can hopefully latch on to something that is more relatable. So we're trying to find those relatable moments. Like we're just talking about our experiences in a car like normal people. There's that. But then, yeah, there is also that, as you just said, Ollie, there's also that element of people who are probably going, I'm maybe never, ever going to be able to get to, in this case, Japan. Maybe this is one way for me to understand it as best as I possibly can. So both of those things are true.
Well, you said you focus on local areas and local people. I noticed you focus on things like local storytellers or local breweries, much more kind of Japan on a micro scale, which seems to me, everybody's wondering about what the future of tourism is going to look like in Japan. And a lot of people are advocating for sustainable tourism. Your approach seems in line with sustainable tourism. Do you consider that when filming your content?
I would say yes, absolutely, but perhaps not in the sense that people think about sustainability. So sustainability, we often kind of think of as recycling and reusing things and so on. And we are looking at it more from a sustainable community perspective, I would say. So when I say that, I mean that we are trying to create better connections in terms of understanding with people, so that people who maybe are thinking of coming to Japan in the future, for example, don't just drop themselves into a place and expect that they can just shout in English or whatever, but rather, how do we embed people with a certain kind of cultural intelligence or a certain kind of cultural sensitivity that I think will create more sustainable opportunities and experiences when people travel in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a sustainable approach in terms of, I think, cultural sensitivity, which is much harder to put like a data point on to assign, but something that I hope imbues people with that kind of, oh, maybe I should not just try to smash my way into this situation kind of thing.
Speaking of which, we've mentioned a couple of times now that we've had a whole year and a half where crews from outside are not being able to come in and produce their content. And now we've got people who are locally here on the ground that are kind of trying to fill that gap, or as you're doing in your case, kind of supplying the demand for Japan content in their own way. In a purely career sense, do you think that there's a possibility that when the country reopens, will kind of these foreign production companies look at the content that was produced in the interim and go, oh, I can source people on the ground. Oh, I can go to this person for that. Oh, I can call Alisha for travel content.
Oh, I think it's absolutely possible. Anybody who makes content anywhere and puts it on the internet, there's a possibility that they will be found and contacted, I'm sure. If your work has good reach, if your work is a match for what somebody is looking for, absolutely, I think that that's possible. So, yes, in a nutshell.
With this in mind, I'm interested to know what analytics you're going to be looking at as you start releasing more episodes, because I'm sure with your day job at English Pod, you're very data driven and you look at what the audience responds to and what they like. And that's something that mainstream television doesn't get hold of. So what for you will be successful, and what are you going to be looking at in order to help shape the future of this series and any other projects you do?
Oh, it's a huge question for sure, But yes,
we have
you
2
are
minutes
right.
left of the show. Good luck.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, that was not very nice. No, yes, you are correct. I love data. I love it so much. It's so wonderful. It tells us so many things. So I love it. But I also have to recognize, especially at the beginning of a project, data isn't everything. So we have to really consider ourselves and our personal growth, what kind of personal growth both Erwin and I are expecting to get from this. So there's that element to it, of course. But in terms of goals, we really want people to watch and engage and think. And we get a sense of that when people comment and when people share and when people follow along with the project. Those kinds of things that are harder maybe to, we can quantify them in terms of the numbers that we see in the data and analytics and stuff like that. But we don't really, what we can't track is the emotional change that people are feeling. But I think that when we kind of start to resonate with somebody, or we inspire a bit of a commitment to change in them, or we inspire an interest in them to look into something a little bit further, that will be something really special. And some of the comments that we've already received have already indicated that people are really excited, or they felt moved or excited by the project and they're looking for more. So I already actually feel like it's been a big success in that respect. And frankly, I thought it would be great if a couple hundred people watched the first episode. That was going to be good for me because it's a totally unknown project that I've shared about a few times here and there on social media. But we had well over 1,000 people looking at the first episode. And we've gotten so much good feedback. And so now we're actually in the process of organizing our shoot for episode 2. I have a meeting tomorrow to hopefully finalize everything for that. So we're just going to continue rolling forward and trying to improve based on the things that we learned from the previous episode. And actually, I'm very excited about kind of the end result that will happen, that will kind of emerge after maybe 10 to 12 episodes are done. I think that we'll really start to see a really cool picture emerge.
Yeah, well, we're placing bets on episode 12 will be just full-on River Cruise content. It won't just be a passing shot, it will be the whole thing.
I can't rule that out, but I'm not sure that everybody will stick around for a 60-minute drone shot of a boat. But, I mean, you guys could try. You guys could put that on maybe a YouTube channel and let me know how it goes. You can share your data and let us know.
Challenge accepted.
Great, love it. But yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. The world of content is so interesting. There's so much room to play and explore and see what kind of person you are and what kind of things that you can make. So, you have to make something and just kind of see what it provokes in people.
Yeah.
And see how you feel about it and what you want to do next.
Well, there's the answer to why I stopped doing my YouTube channel. I was provoking mostly rage in old Japanese men.
Hey, thanks very much for listening to this episode 87 of Japan by River Cruise, and a special thanks to those who continue to support us by being a monthly member. For $5 a month, they get the show early, they get some bonus bits, and they get a free ticket to our boat when we can finally afford one. We genuinely appreciate your support.
Thank you very much to our guest this week, Alisha Ivelich. Alisha, we're looking forward to seeing where Elements of Japan goes next.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you guys. And if anybody wants to check out Elements of Japan, the first episode about Iwate is now up on youtube.com/Elements of Japan. So check us out there and be ready for the next episode in Shizuoka. You can follow me and you can follow my teammate Erwin on social media as well. All the links are on YouTube.
They're also in our notes. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week.